Hi, my name is Lynn Thorne, and I'm the interpretive tour guide here at the aquarium, as well as a bird rehabilitator. So I've been actually working with longtails for the last 4 years. When they come in, members of the public bring them in. Either they're injured or sometimes they're underweight, often affected by storms too, where they get washed out into the ocean, and people will be going by on their boats and find them and bring them into us here. And I take over at that point and do the triage work if it's necessary, and husbandry, and then the final release. And also try to wrap in the people that find the chick as well too, and be involved in the release as much as possible. So it's really a wonderful way to kind of connect with the public, and allows them to really understand and see, up close, what one of these chicks actually look like. You don't often get that opportunity with birds. They're the aviators of the world, and we see them from afar, but to actually have that personal contact and be able to check them out, I think is a really wow experience for people. And it helps the whole overall environment. People caring about the environment, if they get involved in it, it has more meaning to them. And our big mission here is education. So we want to educate the public on the various details about this species. We only have about 2,500 to 3,000. So anything that affects what happens to our population here would be really significant. So they're a species that we need to keep an eye on, and they only come into land to breed. So they're normally pelagic seabirds. White-tailed tropic birds is what they're called, Phaethon lepturus. And it's just an amazing experience to be able to get to work with them. And I've learned some techniques as well too, and developed some techniques of exercising them to get them stronger and a little more fit to be released and be successful. So what we did today is we went up to the top of the roof and let go a longtail that was about 10 weeks old. His name was Trunk. He was actually found by Susie and Stephen Johnson off of Trunk Island, floating in the water. And sometimes what happens is that they'll get out there and they just don't have a long enough wingspan to be successful. You need a wing chord of about 265 in that area. And we're finding this year that actually wing chords are growing a bit longer even. There's different variations from year to year, but you need that minimum amount really for them to fledge successfully. And the weight needs to be at a right weight. Sometimes they'll come in a little too heavy, and then they'll need to pare down a little bit and get down to about 350, 360 is an ideal weight for them to leave at as well too. Because if they're a little too heavy, then they're going to go and kind of plunk in the ocean. So it all kind of converges at the same time, and they get the instinct to go. Plus the fact the parents at that point, the relationship can get a little contentious towards the end. It's sort of like the baby leaving the nest, and a little asserting a little independence. So the parents will back off the feeding side of it, and that's their sort of their cue to go. And hopefully all the conditions are great when that happens. So what we did today was we let him off in 13-knot winds, and you want to try to get the winds so they're right into the face of the bird, so they get that good lift underneath their wings. And he headed out, and we're going to go and check out now in the boat to make sure he did actually make it up over and head southeast, hopefully. And we'll have a few more to release coming up in the next few days as well too, but you've got to have the right weather conditions to do it. And yeah.
What's the best thing somebody can do if they happen to see a bird that might be in trouble or laid up somewhere?
Well, the best thing to do is if you can get it into a box, if you can pick it up, and usually by the time chicks are found, they're pretty exhausted, so you're not going to run into too much of a risk of them biting you. But that might happen, but you just have to kind of weigh that. If you feel comfortable enough to be able to get it into a box, make it as dark as possible, because that calms them down. And one really important thing to learn about birds is that they may appear very lively and full of energy, but what they're doing is actually presenting a facade of strength, because a potential predator out in the environment, if they see that weakness, they're going to kind of zone in on that and possibly get into a predatory prey situation. So they will appear very lively and very full of life, but they're actually really, really nervous and really stressed out at that point. So the best thing you can do is to get them in darkness as quickly as possible, and call the aquarium, or you can call me 799-8888, and I can come pick it up. I have a lot of experience picking the birds up in various different situations, so that helps a lot too. So I can be out there fairly quickly as long as someone sort of stays and watches and that sort of thing. So the best bet is either, if you feel comfortable, scoop it up, put it in a box, or give us a call.
Excellent. What sort of success rate would you say you've had with rehabilitating birds that have been brought in?
In the last few years, actually, I've done quite well. I started out about 85%, and I've got it up to 95% now. So I think that's due in part to what I've developed with the exercise regime to get them in the water to do, I call them bath therapy sessions. And essentially what they're doing is that they're exercising their wings. They do what's called, I've dubbed it a noodle wash, and it's very fun to see because they sort of noodle themselves under the water and shake their heads around and their whole little bodies go. And then you see them preening afterwards, which is a very important part of the process, because if they don't get enough oils on their wing feathers, then that does affect their ability to fly properly and to shed off any sort of moisture that's, if they get into the water and they get waterlogged and they can't get out sometimes. So I'm trying to think where I left off there. That's what you call a senior moment.
To storms.
Yes.
We've been lucky this year with none of it as became a low place. Do you find a correlation between storms coming into the Bermuda area and birds being found in trouble?
Yes, most definitely. Especially with low-lying nests, you find that they'll get washed out. And it's difficult because if it's during a storm, then very often, you won't ever find them again. They just get overwashed. But yeah, the storm activity, unfortunately, this is the time of year that they breed and they're fledging. Cahows are a little bit wiser that way in some respects, that they come in the wintertime and do their breeding and they're pretty much out of here by the end of June. But these guys do get into the hurricane season, and we have to deal with that. And the best thing to do, again, is just to bring them in if they're stressed, keep them quiet. I do a lot of hydrating in the beginning if they're dehydrated, which often will happen. They've been sitting out there, and yeah, so it's definitely, that's a big factor.